So our speaker today is somebody well known to us and somebody who always has great stories to tell and is naturally funny, and I always admire that. It's Ethel Tink Landers. Come on up, Tink.
No, Brian, that's next week. I hope I'm wired. Can you guys hear me? I hope I'm wired. Look at these beautiful faces. Look at them. How about Zoom? Look at all the people on Zoom. God bless each one of you. And for all of you to remember, we have a YouTube channel for Unity 5 Cities and San Luis Obispo. So if something I say or previous speakers have said or future speakers, you can always go back and re-listen or share that link, okay? It's the month of love. It's the weekend of love. How many got a Valentine's Day card? Raise your hand. Oh, look. I don't want to put you on the spot. Some of these couples seem to be squirming in here. Well, for those of you who didn't, I have lived with many schnauzers, and they're very smart, but I've yet to teach them to give me a card. They do leave me gifts sometimes. All right, my title today is Love is a Verb. Love is a verb. How many of you diagrammed sentences in school? Did anyone? What was that? It seems like that's all I did in junior high, I think it was. And it was kind of like a long division problem, except with words, right? And so we would find the noun, the subject, and then we'd find the action word, the verb, and we'd identify those. And so love is a verb. And, when this came to me, it really wasn't my idea. I have a dear friend, Ingrid Piers, who attends the Unitarian Universalist Church. And she said that's their theme, that love is action. Love is a verb. And she says love is a verb means we take conscious action where needed. We focus on a personal ethical growth and adapting to new truths with deep listening, addressing complex experiences, and fostering love and justice within our community. Now she says we notice where there is injustice, and we act to help others. As Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. It bends toward justice. Now, that's been hard for me. Is everyone having a hard time staying in balance with what's happening? Oh, I'm taking Amanda's grief class, and one of the reasons I went is I'm feeling such grief for what's happening in our country. And I try to stay informed, and I try to stay in balance. I read the New York Times, I read the Atlantic, our local paper, NPR, I flip channels, I get the conservative stuff, I get the liberal stuff. And yet it's hard to stay in balance. But one thing, actually, Deborah mentioned it during our pray-in this morning, that the monks, the Walk for Peace by the monks, did you see that? Hopefully those on Zoom saw that. And did you get to see this ceremony in the National Cathedral? When they were in Washington, D.C., in the National Cathedral, which is, if you've not been there and you get a chance to go, please go. It's fabulous. But they were taking questions and answers, and someone clear at the back asked a question. And he stood up, and he looked to be Muslim, possibly. And he asked, basically, how do we blend our commitment to peace when we see atrocities and injustice over and over again? And one of the venerable leaders stood up and answered by stressing the importance of staying spiritually balanced, but socially conscious. He stressed what is happening to our country really does fall on each of our shoulders. It's up to us to act. And yet, we must stay in balance so that our spiritual strength is much stronger than the injustice. That kind of gives me chills. But that's up to us to stay disciplined spiritually, so our spiritual strength is strong, and we can stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Does that make sense? Excuse me as I flip pages here, but I don't want to miss any of these. One of the things I wanted to share with you was what I do to stay spiritually strong. And believe me, I can use all the prayers and strength I can get. But one of the things I do is I start the day, before I get out of bed, I start saying 3 things I'm blessed by, 3 gratitudes. And those can vary each day. But I say, thank you, God, for this, and my home, and my pets, and my family, whatever might be on your mind. And then, before I leave bed, I set 2 intentions. A spiritual intention. What spiritually do I intend to do today? And then a physical intention, like I'm going to wash the car, or I'm going to mop the floor, or something physical. I'm going to walk 5 miles. And when Brian asked me to speak, actually I was supposed to speak in January, and I had some oral surgery, and I just couldn't do it. But when he asked me to speak, I take it as an honor, but also a big responsibility. And so in my prayer time, I said, God, please give me guidance. What do I have to share? And on top of that, what do I call you? And Jimmy's song was so perfect because, many of the people we attract at Unity, which is considered practical Christianity, but many of us have had trauma in the past. We've had religious trauma in the past. And so the word God may not be comfortable for you, but maybe universe is comfortable, or maybe praying to Jesus is comfortable, or maybe saying spirit or great spirit is comfortable. So during my prayer time one morning, I said, God, how do I address you in this talk? And then here's the words that came to me during meditation. It was almost like a voice came to me and said, the words you use are not important. I hear your heart. The words you say, the words you use for God are not important. God hears your heart. Are we hearing our own hearts today? Are we slowing down enough to be in touch with our hearts? So, I want to have some fun with you. And so, Joe's going to help me. I want to show you some examples in my life where love is a verb, okay? Love in action. Because that's what we're called to do, okay? We're called to love. So if you'll put up that first slide. I have spoken many, many times to you about the fact that I was adopted. Some of you have heard this story. But I was adopted by this wonderful couple. Can you tell they're fun-loving? Pep and Fanny. Pep and Fanny. This was probably back in the 40s when they first met. But, they were filled with joy, filled with love. And back in right when they flipped to 1950, if you'll put up the next slide, Joe, they lived in this house. Look at that classic car, too. But this was a farmhouse in Dana, Indiana, outside of Dana, Indiana. And they didn't own that. They were managing. They were actually fairly poor. They were managing a man's pig farm in Dana, Indiana. Now, he did have dairy cattle, and he had some chickens, and he had garden, he had corn growing and things, too. But Pep and Fanny managed it with his brother, Tut. And then across the road, so there's a little yard. See the little tiny porch, and then there's some grassy area that the car's on. And then right across a gravel road is this field, and you can see Fanny's dog. Fanny loved dogs. Fanny connected to dogs. There's a reason dogs spelled backwards is God. They are connected. And then you can see there's just a little wire strung, and the railroad is across the street. So they were you can go ahead and take that down, Joe. Just stop that for a second. But back in 1950, they were hardworking again, living on this farm. Pep took care of the fields with Tut, and then Fanny was to take care of everything else, feed the guys, etc. But Fanny grew very, very ill. Now, when she was 16, she had had some severe surgery It's a wonder she even lived. It was like 1931. And they went in and they took out part of her intestine. They took out her appendix and they took out much of her female organs. So she had never been able to have children. In fact, it took so long for her to heal that she didn't graduate high school then. She did go back when she was 62 and said, I got my diploma. But she couldn't graduate high school then. And so she did finally marry Pep, and they had this loving, happy relationship. And were running this farm when she became ill. And by this time, she's about 38. And she lost her strength. She couldn't even get up those stairs to get in that upstairs bedroom. So she couldn't help on the farm. They finally scraped together money to go to a local doctor who said her heart was weakening and he felt she had maybe 6 months left to live. And so she was relegated to the couch in that house. But she had Jody at her side, her wonderful dog. Now, one afternoon, Jody pawed at Fanny and needed to go outdoors. So Fanny pulled herself up off that couch and got over to the screen door, an old wooden screen door from one of those latches, you know. For some reason, we thought that was going to keep out the bad guys. I guess that little latch. But she let Jody onto the porch. And right at that time, a bunny ran across the yard. And Jody took off like a bullet. And ran across that yard and across that gravel road and into that field. And that's when the train came. Fanny heard the train whistle loud, 2 loud train whistles. Fanny panicked because Jody's heading straight for that train track. And Fanny raced onto the porch and she fell. And she said she found herself falling through space. She said it was like she was going through this tunnel, and she said her entire life was passing around her like a kaleidoscope. You remember those kaleidoscopes we had as kids? And she said, like everything she had ever loved was just swirling in this kaleidoscope. And she was aiming towards this bright white light. And then, and she said it was peaceful. She said she wasn't afraid. But then a voice she heard this loud voice say, "Send this one back. I have work for her. Send this one back. I have work for her." And when she came to, she said her whole body was on fire. It was like she had hit her funny bone, like when we were kids, we hit our bone, you know, and it kind of numb your whole body. Well, Fanny's body was like that. And Jody was licking her face. Jody made it. I don't know about the bunny, but Jody made it. And Fanny got back in the house and got on the couch, and she says she just tingled. She was like on fire and tingling. And of course, the men are out in the field. She didn't have anyone to tell. Now, she told me this story when I was 35. She hadn't shared it with me till then. But she said she knew she died. She knew she was going through this tunnel toward the next, or the great beyond. And God said, no, this time I'm going to take action and send this one back. It was love in action, because within a couple of weeks, her brother Dale came to her and said, Fanny, I know you and Pep have tried to adopt a couple of times and been turned down. You're considered too old, too poor. But there's a baby coming. And I know a lady in trouble. She needs to place this baby. I think you can take it. And Fanny went, I don't know if they'll accept me. You know, I've been ill. And Dale was sure, because Dr. Hoover was handling this. Dr. Hoover. Joe, can you put up that next slide? Now, Dr. Hoover, you're not going to be able to read this, so I'm going to read it to you. Dr. Hoover, this was considered Hoover's sanatorium. Hoover's sanatorium. Dr. James J. Hoover was a graduate of Meharry Medical School. He opened the Hoover Sanatorium in 1929. It was the first hospital for African Americans in Terre Haute, Indiana. After his death in 1953, the institution was operated until 1959 by his son Dewey. The building at 2144 8th Avenue in Terre Haute then was leased and operated as an integrated convalescent hospital. Dr. Hoover delivered me. Dr. Hoover hid my birth mother in a janitor's closet in this building, and that's another whole story why that had to happen, but I was delivered in this beautiful building. Go ahead and take that down, Joe. Now, during this time, I was born in 1950, Dr. Hoover, as wonderful as he was, as big-hearted as he wasn't allowed to try on shoes before he could buy them. He could go in the department stores, he could look at the clothes, he could look at the shoes, but he was not allowed to try them on because he was black. But this man, he performed a miracle in Fanny and Pep's life and in mine. And I couldn't have asked for better parents, couldn't have asked for better parents. Now, you know how we say here at Unity, there is one presence, one power in the universe and in my life, and that's God, and God is good. That's the way I've memorized it. And I know that in my soul. And the second Unity principle is we are spiritual beings having this human experience. We're created basically in the essence of God. We came from that magical place with God, and we come into these little bodies. And of course, we start having these human experiences, right? We do. But when I came to earth, as when you came to earth, we were energized by God. And what was it that Charles Fillmore said? Something like, I sizzle with enthusiasm?
Yes, fairly sizzle. Enthusiasm.
I fairly sizzle with enthusiasm. Well, that's what we were like when we were born. Absolutely. And then, as Dr. Wayne Dyer likes to say, society edges God out. Society edges God out, E-G-O. We're taught the ego, and we're taught we're not good enough, or in some situations we're taught we're better than those people, those darker skinned people. We're better than those, right? That's the ego. So, if you will put up that first baby slide, Joe. So I just want to show you a little bit what it's like when you're born on a pig farm in Indiana. Okay, there we go. When you're born on a pig farm in Indiana and there's no running water in the house, but where do you take a bath? Well, right outside, yeah, and that's, I think, where I got my love for hot tubs.
Is that you right there?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. You're naked.
I am, look at that. On Valentine's Day weekend. Okay, the next baby slide. Okay, there's another thing. I have a love for hats and ducks, right? You can tell we were pretty poor, but I had a duck and I had a hat. How about that? And then the last baby slide is, there's Jody. That's kind of an old ratty picture, but there's my love for modes of transportation and dogs. And Jody made it. Jody was my first experience with dogs, and she was at my side taking care of me the whole time. Now, you can go ahead and take that down now, Joe. Thank you. As I close, I want to talk to you about another love in action situation with Pep and Fanny. I was about 3 years old when Pep brought the idea of moving to the West Coast. And remember, they're on a pig farm in Indiana. They have next to no money. And at first, he even thought about Alaska. Well, Fanny put a kibosh to that. We're not taking the baby to Alaska right now. But she said, I will move to the West Coast if we can take all of the furniture we have, we can take all of the animals that we own, and that includes my 2 fish tanks, and my dogs, and my cats, right? And actually, she had 3 hens she wanted to take too. So now Pep, he had a wanderlust, and he had a very creative energy, and Mom used to say he could talk to a lamppost. He could win friends. If he was in this room, you'd all know him. He'd be friendly and happy. And so what happened? Fanny figured, there's no chance he's going to be able to move us all to the West Coast. But Pep again, believes in that third unity principle, that we create our life experience through our way of thinking, right? He knew we're going to go. And so he had caroused down on the streets of the big town of Dana, Indiana, and at an old used car lot, there sat this ancient, very old flatbed truck. And so what he did, he went up to it, and it had been there so long the tag was faded on it, but it said $50. And so he went to he had different brothers in that area. He borrowed money, and he went in with a big smile on his face saying, "I've got the $50, I want that truck." And the salesman went, wait, I think the tag's faded, that's 500. That's not 50. And Pep was not dissuaded. He went ahead and told the guy the big dream of moving to the West Coast and eventually going to Alaska, which we never did. But anyway, after about 30 minutes of talking, Pep drove off in that truck because that $50 in his hand spoke pretty loud. He pulled into that little yard, and Fanny was flabbergasted because it's just a big old flatbed truck. But he proceeded to go around that farm with the farmers, collected every piece of scrap wood he could find, and he built sides and a roof, loaded up everybody, and we headed west. Pep had a power of imagination and a belief that anything is possible, and he did it. There's a slide from Matthew I wanted to share before I close. Is it next? I can't remember, Joe. I've lost track now. Yes. And let me make sure I get the exact wording that's on that slide. It's one of my favorite verses, and it's Matthew 22, verses 36 through 40. In the New International Version, there was a member of the crowd, and they were listening to Jesus, and this person said, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" And Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself." So the trick is, how do we get this spiritual practice nailed down so we stay strong, but we stay connected to our communities? We practice loving God, but also loving ourselves. Because if we don't love ourselves, how are we going to love our neighbor? Now, I said I wanted to take some action as I close. And I asked you if you got a Valentine. So I have two helpers in the audience. If Alicia and Lisa are going to start handing out a Valentine to each one of you. And then we'll go over it together. But as they do that, Joe, could you put up my email address for all my family, my friends, my Unity family online? Please write down my email address and email me that if you'd like a Valentine. It'll be a little late, but we'll get you one, absolutely. And as we make sure that everyone here in the audience has it, I'll get my copy and we'll go over it together as I close. And if you will turn to, Joe, if you'll put the first slide up. Start with the side that says, "I start," and I'll read it. I just wanted to share with you, not that you have to do this, okay? But I wanted to share with you my practice as a reminder of this talk. So I start and end each day in gratitude, naming 3 blessings. The name I thank may be Mother, Father God, Jesus, Buddha, Universe, Spirit, Yahweh, Source. There are so many names, but they all boil down to love, the energy of love. God smiles and responds to the name I choose because God hears my heart. Please remember that. God hears your heart. And then on the other side, let's read this together. This is how I'm using Unity's 5 principles in my life. They're slightly different wording from what we present each week. If you go on different Unity websites, you'll see them slightly different. That's because these were a summary of the Unity philosophy by the Phil Moore's granddaughter for an article in a magazine. So let's read the first one together. I know there is one presence, one power, universe, and in my life, God the good. So feel that, know it. That's an action word. I know. Make sure you know. That's how you stay strong. Second, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are created in the essence of God. We are inherently good. We are. It's very important to remember, you are inherently good, and so is that person that you may be having some issues with, right? Okay, third one. We create our life experiences through our way of thinking. I am still and I know, okay? That's really helpful to remember. I have to catch myself on that one. And then the last one, there is amazing power in affirmative prayer and meditation. I pray, I am still, I am connected. And lastly, love is a verb. I apply these principles daily. My spiritual practices align me with God. I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate your attention. My heart goes out to you, and I hope you fill yourself with joy and love so you can spread the love to others. Thank you.